Hi everybody, welcome to part 2 of our sewing with our fold over elastic. Now as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've done a little bit of my elastic so that you can actually see what it looks like. So I'm just going to take you through the steps, the preparation, and then I'm just going to do a demo for you on how you're going to sew that elastic. Now first off, let's look at my setup here. When I sew, I always have this little setup. I have my small little pressing board, and I love using the small one. I don't want to go take out my bigger board when I'm working because it's really just seams that I'm pressing as I'm going. And then I have always my silk organza cloth. Now you've also got a silk organza cloth. You've gone and you've done your rolled hem on it, and I'm telling you, I am never without it. It protects my fabric. If you don't use a pressing cloth, you eventually start getting damage to that fabric. You're going to get a bit of shine. Some fabrics, it actually burns it as soon as you just put this iron onto it. So for me, this is really, no matter what fabric I'm working with, I always have this over it. And if you look at my elastic that I have there, we've got a clear view when we are busy with our pressing. And then my other goodies that I always use, and this is just my pressing stuff, is I have my clapper. Now this is a new clapper that I have. I've always used a smaller one, but I got someone that made clappers for me, and this is, I think it's maple wood, and it is really heavy. It is really nice to work with. In the beginning I thought maybe it's a little bit big, but you know what? If I put this on my seams, I don't even have to press down like I did with my smaller clapper. This is a heavy little block of wood, and it just keeps those, or it flattens those seams perfectly. So I'm going to show you how I use it with my elastic as well. And then lastly, what I have as well, okay, I always work with my little prim iron, but I work with these little it's heat guards. I do sell them. They are in the shop. I think there's still a couple left. Because when I'm working and I'm pressing and my fingers are close to this area, because we've got to fold this elastic in half, and when I'm pressing, I always get a burst of steam that's burning my fingers, or I touch my fingers because I've got to work close to the iron to manipulate this elastic. So I always work with this, and it is just amazing. I haven't burned my finger since. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it on because I am pressing now, and I am someone that's forever burning my fingers. So I'm just going to put this on. So our first step that we're going to do is to go and fold this elastic in half. Now I've got a pink piece here that I've already pressed to show you. But when you are looking at your black elastic now, you are going to see that it's got a bit of a shiny side, and you're also going to see that there's a matte side. Now we're going to press it so that the matte side is on the inside. It's got a natural line running in the center, and that is my fold line. So you don't even have to guess where you've got to go and fold it. It's automatically got a thinner piece running in that center so that it just folds naturally. So let's go and press this now. We do steam a little bit, and all I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold it down, and I'm going to start pressing it down. And again, can you hear that steam? Usually by now I would have burned my finger, so I can really go and work close to the edge of my elastic. Once I've done a small area, I just go and I put my presser on it, and I'm going to do this section, not my presser, my clapper. I'm going to do this section with my clapper, and I'm going to do a section without the clapper so that you can actually see the difference. Now when you are working with this, and look how beautifully flat it's come out, and I'm just going to lift it so you guys can see it just flat all the way through. So let's do one now where I'm pressing. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm pressing without my clapper. I must be honest, I'm trying to convince you to work with a clapper. I get perfect seams every time, especially with thicker fabric when I do my denims. I have such flat seams. I just love having those flat seams. So I'm just going to do that, and we're not going to use the clapper now. So let's have a look at the two. When I start working with this, automatically, and I know it's black, but automatically it doesn't go all the way flat. It's almost like it's open like this. Look at that. Where the area that I've pressed with my clapper, look how flat that area is. Can you see? I know black is so difficult, so that's why I'm going to be doing my demo on the pink. But I just always get those flat areas over there. Now, one other thing that I do want to mention, don't excessively go and pull the elastic when we are pressing. I'm just really holding on slightly to it, and as I'm going, you can see I'm literally just pushing it down that little bit with my thumb. So there is a slight stretch that I do, but it's because I've worked with this fold over elastic for such a long time that I already know I can just give it that slight little pull if I really want it to be nice and flat. So that is your preparation. That's what you're going to do for me. And then also one thing that I want to ask you, please don't go cut your elastic into pieces, otherwise you are not going to have enough elastic. We don't pin it when we're working with this. I'm manipulating the elastic, and some places I'll be stretching a little bit. So I usually tend to roll up this section. I only have this little piece left because I've got one armhole left to do. I will usually roll this up, and with the clips that you received on day one, I will just go clip it together, and as I'm working I'll just roll off that area that I need. So let's have a look now at my top that I've done. You can see it is lying beautifully flat on the neck and on the armhole. And the way that we're going to do it, I'm not taking you through the steps of sewing this because there is instructions in the for the pattern. But it is so easy, guys. It is really a shoulder seam, side seam. We're going to do the elastic, and it's going to be the hemming. That is basically all there is to it. You are going to finish this top in such in a couple, I would say maybe an hour. So let's take this off. I've just pinned this here so I can show you. So the way that I sew this top when I'm working with the elastic, and let's just get that off. There we go. All right. I would go and sew up my one shoulder seam. So I would sew the one shoulder seam. You can see the other shoulder I've left open. All right. Then what you do, you start at this edge, and I always give myself, I did trim it a little bit, I always give myself a little bit of a longer piece. Otherwise you'll find that this front part always slips out. It's not secured nicely into the elastic there. And then we go and I sew all the way around. I don't stretch the elastic. If there's any straight areas, I'm not going to be stretching, but I do like when I get to this area to give it a slight pull, and I'm going to show you when I'm doing the demo with the pink so that you can see. And all this is really, I've just gone and I've sewn this. Once this is sewn, I will go and put my shoulders lines together, and I'll go and sew this. What you have to make sure is that where the elastic is lining up there, you want to make sure that it is exactly lined up on top of each other where I'm going to be sewing. You're not worrying about this top part. Because of the angle of the shoulder, it's going to be angled like that if I've got my elastic. So I just make sure wherever my seam allowance is, which is 1 centimeter, that is where I'm going to be starting to sew. And I start from this side first. I do a bit of a locking stitch. I'm not going to start reversing a reverse stitch there. So you want to make sure that if you don't have a knotting stitch on your machine, just drop your feedocks. That's all you have to do to give it a bit of a knotting so it doesn't move, and then you can start sewing. This is where the awl also comes in handy that you've got, because I need to help this through a little bit as we're going to start sewing. Again, I'll show you that. And then you're just going to line everything up, and we're going to sew this closed, and there the neckline is done. Now, I know some of you might be asking, why am I doing it that way? Why don't I close the shoulders, sew all the way around? And I want to show you what happens if we do it that way. If you look at the underarm that I finished, because once the neckline is done, I go and I sew both underarms, again leaving this underarm point open, and then once it's done, then only do I sew my side seams. That way, if you look at that, and I really hope this black is going to show up. Let me come closer. All right, so that way, once it's sewn, I just go with my sewing machine and I just catch that elastic there and I keep it flat. Can you see that seam there? It just keeps it flat for me. Then I don't have any problems on this area. I've got a nice smooth transition. If we do it the other way, where my shoulders are closed up, the armholes is already closed up because we sewed the side seam. When I start sewing, when I get to the end, I have to overlap this elastic. And in order to overlap it where we are finishing off, I can't just go and do it that way because I'm going to get this fraying over there. So first off, we have to open this and I have to fold it in, and then when I get to this section where I started sewing and I overlap it, look what's happening. And this gives me a lot of bulk on that area. I always get a bit of a step. It will never lie flat so that I've got a smooth transition from that side to that side. It is literally always giving me a bit of a bump up and then it carries on. And then on this area, I've always got a little bit of elastic sticking out. It is not a neat finish. So I don't like doing it that way. I like to sew it all the way through. Then I'll go and close my seams. So this one, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the shoulder seam. Once the shoulder seam is done, I'm going to take this and let me just pin it in place so that we can have a look at this. And I'm just going to pin, but remember, always line up on that area over there. So I'm going to just pin this in place for now. So I'm going to have that neat finish. Can you see that? And again, this part that's overlapping there, I'll trim a little bit and I'll make sure with my sewing machine I just sew it down, or you can even do it by hand stitching. Just catch it on that area. But that is then the neckline done. Now once this is done, and I actually need one more pin just to demonstrate here. Black is not the best color to work with. I'm just looking for a pin. It is really not the best. Pin in the mouth, we're not supposed to do that. It is really not the best color. That's why the demo will be with that pink. But let's just put that through. Now once I've sewn the shoulder seam, all you're going to do is sew from underarm all the way across to underarm point. Once you've done that underarm, you are going to go to the side seam, match your elastic again at the underarm point, sew down, and you are going to sit with your finish that's looking like this. Now I haven't overlocked anything yet. I wanted to just show you this, and I did work on my sewing machine because I've got stripes that I've got to match. So I wanted to make sure that when I am opening this up, that my lines are running all the way around. So that is really all there is to it. Then we're going to do the hem. Now before I move on to my sewing machine, I have to mention to you that there's a new thread on the market. It's called Gutermann Maraflex. Guys, this is absolutely amazing working with our knits. All right, it is a stretch thread. It is giving you about 80% stretch. I did a sample here as well on this fabric just to show you. So now you can go to your sewing machine and sew straight stitching. No more little zigzags when we are sewing on a sewing machine with our knits. Look at the amount of stretch that I'm getting there. The only thing that you've got to make sure is you set up your sewing machine. You need lower tension. So you're going to go quite low. My basic tension on my machine, because it's a computerized machine, is 5.5 setting. I went down to a 2.75. You are going to have to do a test on your fabric to make sure that you've got it correct, and then just make a note of that. But if it's too tight, you won't get that stretch. We do need that stretch. And look at this. I am going to hold it like this to show you, and I am really so happy with this thread. Look at that stretch. I'm really pulling it to the maximum of this fabric, and it's still not snapping. So now hems are going to be perfect. It's going to stretch with our fabric. Now let's take one of these threads, and I wanted to show you I wanted to show you it comes in 80 colors. I've got a stand with all 80 colors, and this is my black because I really wanted to show this to you. And there, look at the stretch. It is like a normal, it reacts like a normal polyester, but it stretches. Look at this amount, and I'm going to roll it up a little bit more. And I'm just going to hold it. Look at that amount. And there it snaps only once I've gone that far. But I have done this test so many times. Look at this. Look at the movement of that thread. All right. So this is perfect. I did it on my elastic as well with a straight stitch. Look at my elastic stretching on this top. It is amazing. I am so happy. So we've got to remember, if we're working with this thread, we are working with a lower tension. Oh yes, the other thing that I've got to mention, your needle is going to be a 70 or 80 ballpoint or stretch needle. That is the needle that you use with this thread. And then you need to do 4 stitches per centimeter to get that amount of stretch. If you don't have the correct stitch length, you're also not going to get the amount of stretch that they are actually recommending. Now, in order to do it, when I looked at it, I thought, well, 2.5 millimeter on my machine will give me 4 stitches per centimeter, but we are working on a knit. When I tested it on my knit, I actually needed to up my stitch length a little bit. My stitch length is 3 on my machine, and that gave me my 4 stitches per centimeter. I literally went and I marked a centimeter, and I just sewed in between to count my stitches and to make sure. And it went up a little bit because of the stretch of the fabric. So as I was sewing, the fabric was stretching. So on the 2.5, I didn't get 4 stitches in that 1 centimeter. But now on my 3 setting, I'm getting that. So that is all you've got to look for if you're going to do that. Now, I am telling you guys about these threads. I haven't launched it yet. I'm launching it in January. The suppliers are already out on some of the colors. So what I've done, I have made 3 little kits. I have made one that is light, so it's all our pastel colors, and I'll put a photo of that there. Then we've got our neutrals, which have got our white and our black in, and some grays and beiges. And then I did brights, which is our brighter colors. But there is absolutely beautiful colors. You can buy this as a kit. And when you are buying this kit, you are getting 12 colors plus a free little holder, so that you know this is your holder for your stretch threads. And they are 350 Rand for the 12 colors with your free box. They sell for 30 Rand each. You can also go onto the Gutermann site, go look for the Maraflex color chart. I haven't put any of the other colors on my website yet. I've only put this, but if there's any colors you want, you're welcome to email me, ask if I've still got stock on it. And then lastly, what I wanted to show you is they've also got 4 neons. And that is because of people making swimsuit, and we've always got those bright lycras that we see in the shops. And even if there's a black lycra, they tend to sometimes have patterns with very bright neonic colors on there. So there's our 4 colors there. So this is really suitable for any stretch fabric, for your lycras, for exercise wear, swimwear. I'm going to try it on my lingerie sewing when I'm doing my nighties, all of that as well. So this is an amazing thread. For me, it's a breakthrough. It is making my life so much easier when I'm actually sewing now. And as I said, I was amazed. A normal straight stitch, and just look at this, guys. Look at that. It is amazing the amount of stretch that I have, and it goes back on itself again, which is so good. But enough about our new threads. Remember, if you want to order, go to the website, schuurferdesigns.co.za, and you can go and get that. You can also go and get yourself a clapper if you want a clapper. These boxes are limited because the supplier is already out of stock, so I couldn't do too many of these boxes or look at the loose colors. But let's move on to our sewing machine now, so I can just demonstrate to you how you're going to sew that elastic. Let me show you how you're going to sew on the elastic. So we've got our elastic, which is pressed. I like to work with my tailor's awl now, and then we've also got our clip, and we're just going to start. I've just cut out the back neck curve. I'm not going to sew the whole neck curve with you. It's really just to show you the technique on what you're going to do. Now, I always like to give myself a little extra on the elastic side. Like I mentioned before, if we don't do that, we are going to find that it might slide out and I don't get a neat finish over there. I'm not even working with pins because as I'm going to be manipulating my elastic and my fabric. So all I'll do is just to keep it in place for me to get going, I'm just going to put my clip over there, and then I make sure that is pushed in. And again, when you put it down, you can always just lift up and you can just push that fabric in against the fold. And then to just keep it there now so that I can get it under my presser foot, I'm just going to slide it in, and that is it. My awl is actually keeping everything in place for me. So now I've got my 1/4 inch foot on. I like sewing with my 1/4 inch foot because I've got a bit of an open space that I can see what I'm doing. And you can use, if you want to, your edge stitch foot. I don't like working with it because this plate actually pushes my elastic a little bit. So I really don't like working with that. I'd rather opt for having either my normal foot or even just a slightly open toe foot. I just find this controls it better for me. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to make sure, and I just want to lift again. I just want to place this so this is correct, and I'm going to start on my elastic so that I know everything is lying flat. Sometimes what happens with this foot, it just wants to push the lip up a little bit, and again my awl is just there to keep it in place. So I really do like working with the awl. My fingers are away from the needle, and I know I am not going to have a little bit of an accident where I'm sewing through my needle. And you know what, we've had it when I had the shop so many times. We heard of someone doing that. Now as I'm going to start, I can now remove that because I want to open up all the time, and I want to go and place the fabric right against that fold. And then I fold it over, hold it in place, and then I'm going to sew. So it's really sewing a little section at a time. I'm working on my table here as well. I'm standing back a little bit, so I'm just worried that I'm going to be sewing very skew because I'm always very particular about that. So I'm just going to try and keep it straight. We are not right on the edge. We are about 2 millimeters in from that edge, and then it catches the bottom part and the top part nicely. And can you see again, I get to a place where I put this in. Now on the curve I can see that it has stretched a little bit. All I want to do is just then take my elastic, and I'm just giving it, can you see, ever so slightly. I'm not doing that. I don't want to stretch it. I'm going to get puckers. I'm just like ever so slightly, maybe by a millimeter or so, I am going to be stretching that. And again, I love working with the awl here because we are working on a slightly difficult area, and I can see it's going to lift there. I'm just going to put it back. This is just like an extra helping hand. There I've just gone skew, guys. Sorry about that, but I am standing back. Usually I am almost right on top of my machine if I'm doing that. On this curve over here, I just wanted to show you. It looks like it could be needing a little bit of just pulling back. And again, it's just a slight pull. Please don't go do that. You are going to get puckers. I'll do it properly up to there, and then I'm going to do where I'm pulling it so that you can see. Let me just do a little bit more. I've put my awl down because with me standing back, I don't have control when I'm sewing. So again, stop, place it. I can see on that curve it's stretched a bit, so I'm just doing a little bit. Place it back, hold it down, support it at the back. There we go. So now I'm going to stretch it too much, so you can see that you are going to get puckers. So if I'm stretching too much, look what's going to happen. You really have to control the elastic. So there we go. And with the black on there, it's looking very harsh. There I'm not going to stretch anymore. I just want to show you. And remember, like I mentioned on the straight section, I really don't want any stretching, but we've got to keep looking at what the elastic and the fabric wants. So if we are looking at that, sorry about the sewing skew, as I mentioned, I am standing back. Usually I am looking right on the top so I can watch my elastic. So if we are looking at this, where I started stretching excessively, and it's actually happened on the black, I hope you can see, I'm getting little puckers going in. If we are looking there, you can see everything is nice and flat. Now, as I mentioned, I will go and pick if I've got anything like that, which is skew. I'll put a photo in for you of my black where I've sewn, where I've actually taken the time to sew it properly. And once you've sewn on all the elastics now, it is really, like I mentioned, just going, and you are going to go and take this section where you can still see the elastic. I'm going to fold it, make sure everything lines up. I'm just going to catch it on my machine there. And all I'm going to do is really almost just wanting to stitch on one spot. I just want to keep it in place. Let me put it this way, and I'm just going to place it down. I'm going to put my needle in that position. Let's see, it's perfect there. And I'm just going to drop my feed hooks for this. I just want to do a couple of stitches in one spot. I'm actually just knotting it on that section. There we go. Let's just get it up. So please make sure you stop with the needle down every time before you start open and shift that fabric in. I'm just actually going to cut it here. Let's see. So now if you look at that, look how it's lining up perfectly. I've actually sewn it down. I think I can go in a little bit further, maybe give it another stitch there as well. And it's just going to keep everything in place. But that is our finish that we have on that area. So please go ahead, go and sew on your elastics. Remember, sew the neckline first, leaving open the shoulder. Then you're going to close the other shoulder. We start with sewing one shoulder. Once both shoulders are sewn, you are going to go and sew on the elastic on the armhole, do your side seams, and then it's just your hemming and your top is done. So I hope that you are from now on going to be working more with your fold over elastic, that you're also going to be using your awl a lot more, especially when we are working on this area. When I had to start on that area, when I sewed my hem, let's just put it this way, when I started sewing there, because it was bulky, I had to use my awl as well. And you can see I keep the awl to position. And I literally hooked it with that sharp point and I helped it through as I started sewing. And for me, this is really a must-have that we need all the time when we are sewing, especially on those thicker areas. But go sew your top, enjoy your sewing, and I'll see you in the next video.